The snow was falling so heavily that night that the streetlights looked like they were drowning in white, and somewhere on the far end of the city, a man was running through the storm as if his entire life depended on it. His shoes were soaked, his breath ragged, and his hands numb from the biting cold, but he couldn't stop. Not tonight. Not when a promise, a hope, and maybe the last chance at changing his life were waiting for him on the other side of town. This was the night of his blind date, a date he never believed he deserved, a date he already feared he had ruined by being unbearably, unforgivably late. And yet he ran, because something inside him whispered that maybe, just maybe, life still had space for miracles, that if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the magic that happens when hearts meet at the right moment. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Ethan Walker was a single dad, and not by choice. 3 years ago, tragedy had taken his wife from him, leaving him with a newborn daughter and a mountain of grief he had no idea how to climb. He worked as a delivery driver, taking every shift he could, often coming home long after midnight just to keep the electricity running and buy diapers. His daughter, Lily, was the only reason he survived the darkest nights. She was the soft light in his storm, the tiny hand that pulled him back when he felt he would disappear completely. But with every bill, every late payment, every winter coat he couldn't afford, Ethan felt the world tightening around him, reminding him over and over that he was alone. 7 months ago, he had been convinced his heart had turned to stone. But then he met Claire, Lily's daycare teacher, who one day quietly handed him a folded piece of paper with a phone number on it. She said someone wanted to help. Someone who heard about him. Someone who wasn't looking for anything in return. Ethan had almost thrown the paper away, but something about the gentle way Claire looked at him made him keep it. The person behind that folded note was Olivia Hart, a billionaire heiress whose name Ethan recognized from the newspapers, magazines, and billboards he passed every day. She owned half the companies he delivered to. The idea that she would even know someone like him existed felt ridiculous. But according to Claire, Olivia was lonely too, for reasons the world couldn't imagine. After weeks of urging, Ethan finally agreed to a blind date on Christmas Eve. He spent hours trying on shirts from thrift stores, brushing his hair, and practicing how to smile without looking tired or broken. But then life struck the way it always had. On that very night, his babysitter canceled last minute, leaving him terrified that he would have to call the whole thing off. And then Lily, sweet Lily, tugged on his sleeve and said she would be okay, that he deserved one night where he tried to be happy. The 6-year-old had pushed him out the door like the bravest little soul in the world, but the universe had different plans. The bus he boarded broke down. The streets were jammed. And then he missed the next bus because he stopped to help an elderly man who slipped on the ice. By the time he finally got access to a rideshare, the app kept crashing from the storm. Everything that could go wrong did. Yet Ethan ran anyway through freezing wind and knee-deep snow, trying to reach a woman he was certain had already given up and gone home. Across the city, Olivia Hart sat inside the softly glowing restaurant, her long coat wrapped around her shoulders, her hair still damp from snowflakes melting against it. She had arrived early, she always did, because she hated the feeling of being late, of failing expectations. She had wealth beyond measure, but no one knew the aching loneliness that lived in her chest. No one knew how many Christmases she spent alone in enormous rooms filled with expensive decorations she barely looked at. No one knew how many times she wished she could just stop being the woman everyone admired from a distance and be someone real, someone whose laughter didn't echo in empty halls. She waited. Then she waited longer. People around her whispered, glancing her way in recognition, wondering if she'd been stood up. But she stayed. She kept looking at the door as if she knew, deep inside, that the man she had chosen to meet was trying his hardest to get to her. She didn't know why she trusted him. She didn't know why she felt drawn to a stranger who seemed to be fighting the world from the bottom up. But something about the stories Claire told her, the dedication to his daughter, the kindness even when tired, the humility, the brokenness wrapped around a gentle heart, made Olivia hope he might be the person she had been searching for. When Ethan finally burst through the restaurant door, drenched, shaking, nearly collapsing from exhaustion. He expected anger. He expected pity. He expected someone who had already walked out long ago. But instead, he found Olivia standing from her table, eyes soft, face glowing not with disappointment, but with relief. As if she had been holding her breath for an hour and could finally exhale. He apologized frantically, soaked clothes dripping onto the marble floor, guilt burning inside him so painfully he thought he might break in half. But Olivia simply stepped closer, gently placed a warm scarf around his trembling shoulders, and guided him to the seat across from her. In that moment, Ethan felt seen for the first time in years, not as a failure, not as a struggling father, not as someone barely holding himself together, but as a human being worthy of patience. The dinner was not fancy, because Ethan couldn't eat much from nerves, and Olivia barely touched her food because she was too busy studying the man who had fought through storms, setbacks, and life's unfairness just to show up. They talked about Lily, about Olivia's childhood that never felt like a childhood, about dreams long abandoned and hopes hidden away. They talked like two people discovering color after living too long in gray. And for the first time since his wife died, Ethan felt the fragile spark of something he thought he had buried forever. When the restaurant finally closed, Olivia walked with Ethan outside into the swirling snow. The street was empty, quiet, as if the world had paused just to hold space for them. Ethan confessed he felt he wasn't good enough for someone like her. Olivia's eyes softened in the golden light as she told him she didn't need perfection, she needed honesty, kindness, and a heart that tried even when life made it impossible. And Ethan had that more than anyone she had ever known. The night ended not with a fairy tale kiss, but with something more powerful, a promise. A promise that hope was not foolish. That good people did get second chances. And that sometimes love found you when you least expected it, sometimes on the coldest night of the year, when you arrived late, broken, and breathless, not knowing someone had been waiting for you all along. That if this story touched your heart, please show your support by liking the video, sharing it with someone who needs hope today, subscribing to the channel, and letting this story live longer by your engagement. Please comment below before the ending, tell us what part of this story stayed with you the most. In the weeks that followed, Olivia visited Lily with gifts not of money but of warmth, books, puzzles, and time spent listening to the child's endless stories. Ethan learned how to breathe again, how to exist without constant fear of failing. And Olivia, for the first time in her life, felt what it meant to have a family that wasn't bound by blood or business, but by love. By spring, the three of them were inseparable, not because fate demanded it, but because their hearts chose it again and again. And every Christmas Eve after that, Ethan told the same story to Lily and Olivia, the story of how he arrived late, soaked, freezing, and terrified, only to discover that the person waiting for him had been waiting her whole life too. Sometimes love doesn't show up early, sometimes it doesn't arrive on time. But the right hearts wait anyway.